Zach Wilson got an opportunity to run with the starting offense at week 3 of Denver Broncos OTAs, but doesn't sound like it was his best day at the office. We're going to break down everything we heard from week 3 of Denver Broncos OTAs on today's episode, Locked on Broncos.
You are Locked on Broncos, your daily Denver Broncos podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
The media got a chance to watch Zach Wilson operate with the first team offense in Denver as OTAs continue into their third week and mandatory minicamp is now on deck. How did the quarterbacks do at practice? What about Courtland Sutton, the offensive line, getting a new role for 2024, a pass rusher for the Denver Broncos, maybe emerging this year? We're going to break it all down on today's episode, Locked on Broncos, which is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Thank you so much, Broncos Country, for tuning in today and every day, especially for all you everyday listeners out there. Mile high salute to every single one of you. And if you're not an everyday listener of Locked on Broncos just yet, go ahead and make that the case. If you listen on Mondays or Tuesdays or whenever you get a chance, ramp that up to Monday through Friday, because we are going to have a fresh new episode every single day of the week for you. And especially if you subscribe, man, you're going to get that notification when a new episode goes live, so you don't miss out on a single thing that's happening with your Denver Broncos all offseason. My name is Sayre Bedinger. I'm the co-host of Locked on Broncos, as well as the site expert over there at predominantlyorange.com, where I've been covering the Broncos since 2013. Zach Wilson getting the opportunity in front of the media at Tuesday's OTA session. Now, if you've been following along, or if you haven't, you need to know that the Broncos have been rotating quarterbacks every day at practice. So each of these guys is getting equal opportunity as of right now during this voluntary OTA section of the offseason. And quite frankly, it's a great opportunity for all of these players. And it's a great opportunity for the Broncos to kind of eliminate the distraction of, hey, somebody's the favorite at this point. It's an open competition, although we kind of expect Bo Nix is in the driver's seat as the team's first round pick in this year's draft. So, but how about Zach Wilson, a former first round pick, the second overall pick, maybe the most talented guy on the roster at the quarterback position, but also somebody who he's got a lot of bad habits to break. And Sean Payton talked about the acquisition of Zach Wilson, why they wanted to do that, and the fact that it took them over a month to get that deal done with the New York Jets. And he said after practice, he said that they felt the investment was worth it relative to his skill set and talent. So you can tell just by what Sean Payton said after practice that acquiring Zach Wilson was a quarterbacks are currency type of move, and you have to go get talented guys when you get the opportunity, because you never know when somebody could end up being like Sean Payton had Jameis Winston in New Orleans, right? He was able to take him from, I mean, I know Jameis isn't currently an all-pro, right? But he went from being a 30 interception guy in Tampa Bay to spending a year in Sean Payton's system and getting acclimated, learning his ways, learning how he operates and how he wants Jameis to operate his offense. And then Jameis went out in the 2021 season, had the highest touchdown percentage of his NFL career through the first 6 games and change of that season, lowest touchdown or lowest interception percentage of his career at that point as well. So there's definitely some precedence as far as, why do you acquire somebody like Zach Wilson? He's clearly a bust, right? As a former second over. I don't think that's necessarily the case. And Sean Payton's doing the right thing. This guy's 24 years old. Get him into your program, buy into his talent, and see what he can become. And the Broncos are doing exactly that. They're giving Zach Wilson an opportunity to compete for this starting job, at least at OTAs, at least as far as we've seen so far or heard so far. But according to Andrew Mason, who was out there at practice, one of our good friends there, Mace, he's always on spot with his coverage of the Denver Broncos. He said it wasn't the best day for Zach Wilson out there at practice. Chris Thomason, he came on the Broncos beat last year after covering the Vikings for a long time, he said that Wilson actually threw an interception to PJ Locke at practice. So it may not have been the best day out there at practice for Zach Wilson. And Cody and I have talked about this on the show before, that we're not expecting Zach Wilson to just eliminate all of the bad habits that he may have formulated in New York over time. It really felt like when he came to Denver, he was coming with this history of operating almost purely based off talent, right? And we've seen his talent outshine his bad decision-making ability at times in the NFL. I've seen it in Denver against the Denver Broncos multiple times where Zach Wilson has played maybe some of his best professional football. And unfortunately, as those bad habits are allowed to compound over time, or as you're just strictly having a guy rely on his physical talent, that kind of stuff can wear over time, and you really have to rewrite things. And Sean Payton noted that Zach is picking things up offensively pretty well at this point, and I think that's the most positive thing. Like, look, the practice field, you're going to go out there and you're going to make mistakes. You're going to have to fail forward. You're going to have to, it's just going to be a process. It's going to be a lengthy process of getting him back on the saddle and getting him to a point where you feel like, okay, you took on this guy as a reclamation project, essentially. And that's what it looks like from the outside looking in. When are we going to see some fruits of that? I don't think you should necessarily expect it at the third week of OTAs, as he's getting an opportunity to run out there with the first team offense. There's not even any pads on right now. And of course, you know what? Quarterbacks, they're going to throw interceptions at practice. That's the nature of the beast. But what about the other quarterbacks at the week 3 of Denver Broncos OTAs? Jarrett Stidham ran with the 2s and Bo Nix ran with the 3s at Tuesday's practice session. And Sean Payton said after practice, when he was asked, like, how does Bo Nix, the Broncos' first-round pick, how does he compare to a young Drew Brees? And I think the way that question was worded really allowed for Sean Payton to give an honest answer and assessment, because you can't compare Bo Nix to Drew Brees. But what about the younger version of Brees? What does Sean Payton see in similarities to those two guys? Well, he said that maturity is an area that he compares to a young Drew Brees. And of course, when Sean Payton got Brees in New Orleans, he had already been in the NFL for a handful of years. He was already a Pro Bowl player at one point for the San Diego Chargers. So to compare their maturity is a big, big deal. And that is something that we've heard a lot about Bo Nix. You see, I mean, he's a married guy. He's a 24-year-old. He's played in 60 plus collegiate games. I mean, maturity should be one of his hallmarks at this point, but that's an area where Sean Payton says that he compares to Brees. And of course, I think with all of the quarterbacks, Payton said, those guys are all quote unquote gym rats. So, hey, last week we get the orphan dogs comparison about all these guys kind of being cast off from, whether it was Bo Nix at Auburn, Zach Wilson with the Jets, or Jarrett Stidham with the Patriots and Raiders. Now we're getting the gym rats comparison. And what does he mean by that? Well, he means that these guys live and breathe football, right? And that's something that I think is a great comparison with Drew Brees, because if you want to be a great quarterback in the NFL, you're going to have to live in the film room. You're going to have to be the person that goes the extra mile off the field. And there's a really great documentary with Bo Nix in it that's been recently released on YouTube. I think it's called From Grit to Glory. It's something that's worth watching because Nix understands these things. He understands that it's those days stacked upon days over time that's going to get him to where he wants to be. That's a process, and it can be a boring process at times. It can be a monotonous process. It can be something that's bordering on frustrating because you're eating the same things every day. You're clocking in at the same time every day. You're going to work the same way every day. You're logging hours in the film room, all of these things. But that's the type of grind that you have to have if you want to be a successful NFL quarterback. And the great thing is that Bo Nix understands that. On top of all that, how maybe Nix can compare to Drew Brees. Sean Payton said that he locates the ball well. He's accurate with the football. And this is not the first time that we've heard Sean Payton really complimenting the way that Bo Nix throws the football. He's a great thrower of the football to all levels of the field. Payton has noted multiple times that the narratives about Bo not having the best arm strength are overplayed. He's been impressed by him in just about every aspect. And so I think Broncos country, there's reason to be very excited about Bo Nix. The last couple of weeks, we've been talking about Bo as running with the starting offense. And that is great. That's great that he's getting the opportunity to do that. But it's not just about that, right? You want to see him taking advantage of whatever opportunity he's getting every single day. And pretty soon he may be throwing the football to Courtland Sutton out there on the practice field. Sean Payton said he thinks that Courtland Sutton will be at mandatory minicamp next week when the Denver Broncos start that portion of their offseason calendar. We're going to tell you about that, as well as maybe a new role that he envisions for some of the offensive linemen on today's episode, Locked on Broncos. Today's episode of Locked On Broncos is brought to you by Game Time. How exciting would it be to be able to go to an NBA Finals game? Well, I guess if you're a Denver Nuggets fan this year, it might not be so exciting, but hey, you know what? It would be cool to cross that off your bucket list if you were able to. And Game Time makes getting NBA Finals tickets even faster and easier than ever before. And prices on the Game Time app, actually, they go down the closer you get to tip off. And with killer last minute deals, all-in prices, views from your seat, and their lowest price guarantee, Game Time is going to take the guesswork out of buying NBA tickets. And look, you may not be going to the NBA Finals, but what about other events that are around your area? Maybe some Major League Baseball, maybe a concert, maybe a comedian that you've been wanting to go see. The Game Time app is going to give you the option to do something pretty incredible. You can customize your spot. There's a feature in the app called Customize Your Spot that allows you to kind of look and see the seat that you're going to sit in before you actually go there. It's easy to find these tickets. There's views from every seat at the venue that you're looking at, and it's always lowest price guarantee. Event cancellation protection, job loss protection, you name it, Game Time has got it. And so what do you want to do? You want to take the guesswork out of buying NBA Finals tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app today, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem the code LOCKEDONNFL, LOCKEDON NFL for $20 off your first purchase. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. Broncos head coach Sean Payton said he does expect wide receiver Courtland Sutton to be at mandatory minicamp next week, but also added that he's not sure that that's going to happen. We're going to talk about what it would mean for the Denver Broncos to get their number one wide receiver back, as well as some other offensive notes from week 3 of Denver Broncos OTAs on today's episode, Locked On Broncos. But want to say thank you and give a shout out to every single one of you that makes Locked On Broncos your first listen of the day, every single day, right here on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And you know that you can find Locked On Broncos free and available everywhere that you get your podcasts, as well as you can watch the show on YouTube, where there's also another maybe potential opportunity for you to fill up your life with some great sports content. You're sick of the national media outlets not talking about your favorite teams. Maybe today's the day. You know what? Make the switch today to Locked On Sports Today, a free 24/7 sports streaming channel that's programmed for you every day to bring you the biggest stories without all that national media coverage going elsewhere, all the arguments and all those different sorts of things. You're going to get curated content with Locked On Sports Today, and it's going to bring you can't miss analysis, opinions, and news. And it's streaming 24/7 on YouTube or the free Amazon Fire TV channels app, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. So how about Courtland Sutton potentially coming back to the Denver Broncos next week? Well, Sean Payton was, of course, asked about that once again, as he has been just about every week this offseason, with Courtland Sutton making it clear, like, he's not happy about his contract. And somebody even asked about that in the media session. They were like, is it the contract that's keeping him away? And Payton joked like, well, it's certainly not because he doesn't like the new uniforms. I thought that was a great little quip there from Payton. And he's continually been giving off this vibe that he's just not worried about the situation with Courtland Sutton whatsoever, right? And he's not worried about it because, number one, he said this. He knows that Courtland works hard. He works extremely hard, and he's been doing that in the state of Florida, where he's been working out this offseason. We know that Courtland's going to come in. He's going to be looking big. He's going to be in shape. He's going to be explosive, all of those different sorts of things. We don't have to worry about him not working hard when he's away from the facility. The reason why everybody's kind of antsy about Courtland coming back is because you want to see your number one wide receiver out there with the number one pick at the quarterback position. Now, The Broncos haven't completely given the reins to Bo Nix yet, but also we haven't seen him throw a pass to Courtland Sutton yet. So I think you want to see that. You want to have your number one receiver out there. Courtland Sutton is also one of the biggest leaders on this team. He was a captain last year. So it speaks volumes when a guy like that is not there, and he's certainly made his point. And there's a lot of players out there, especially at his position or at offensive skill positions. They're getting paid. They're getting a lot of money. So Courtland is seeing that, including Jerry Jeudy, by the way, who got $41 million in guaranteed cash from the Cleveland Browns recently. I mean, Courtland is seeing all these things. He's hearing all these things, and he wants a piece of that pie. And I don't blame him for that, because he only had $2 million guaranteed, $2 million in guaranteed money left on his current contract, which spans through the end of that 2025 season. So it's understandable that he would want a little more guaranteed money, especially at his age, 28 going on 29. You can totally empathize where Courtland is coming from a professional standpoint. We'll see what the Denver Broncos do there, but there are just ultimately the nature of the beast. There are consequences going forward for him missing anything beyond this week. This is the final week of voluntary OTAs. If Courtland misses any time next week, if he doesn't report to Broncos OTAs, mandatory minicamp, he will start to accumulate fines. And that would obviously ramp up the intensity of this situation. So Sean Payton did say he expected Courtland will be back next week, but he qualified that by saying, I don't know for sure. And so just kind of TBD on that, Broncos country. But I think Courtland's been dropping a couple of hints that he may be coming back. We saw him in the little teaser the Broncos did a few days back with their 100 days from kickoff graphic that they posted on Twitter or X. And Courtland was in that photo for the first time. We saw him in those new Denver Broncos uniforms. So he also tweeted out about how it's always been a goal that he wants to get to that Ring of Fame in Denver, as he was congratulating Riley Odoms and Steve Foley for their induction into the Ring of Fame recently. So I think we can expect Courtland back as well. I do think we'll see him back out there on the field. I don't think he's going to miss anything that's mandatory this offseason. His point has been made. We will see what the Denver Broncos do about it going forward. And I think if he does show up to mandatory minicamp, could be a sign that maybe things are progressing. There could be contract discussions going on. We don't know at this point, but we'll see what's happening with that. And Sean Payton also talked about, as we look at the offensive side of the ball and some notes that he had from OTAs, some questions that he was asked. He was asked specifically by Andrew Mason about, the development of Mike McGlinchey, because McGlinchey's a veteran player, but it was just his first year with Sean Payton last year. Payton said that he thinks that you can expect to see a curve of not just McGlinchey, but the entire offensive line go up in 2024. And that was really exciting to hear. I mean, without the pads on, it's hard to really know a lot of, what are we seeing from the offensive line this offseason? Are they progressing? Are they this, that, the other? Sean Payton said he expects us to see that curve go up in year 2. So I guess TBD. Until the Broncos put the pads on, we won't know for sure. But this is an offensive line that was top 10 in ESPN's advanced metrics last year in terms of both run block win rate and pass block win rate. Pro Football Focus only credited the Broncos offensive line with 16 sacks allowed last year, which is pretty staggering when you consider the fact that Russell Wilson was sacked 45 times and Jarrett Stidham was sacked a number of times as well. So there's a lot of the sacks last year on the quarterback position. And Sean Payton noted that that was one of the biggest ways the offense can progress going forward is by the quarterback not taking sacks. It's essentially a turnover play when that happens. And so the offensive line progressing in year 2 would be massive. But something that was really interesting that I had heard about initially, this idea thrown out there by Ben or Sports Talk Denver on YouTube, he brought up a great point that the Broncos have been signing all these backup offensive linemen in 2024. And he connected that to the new kickoff return rules, which we've talked about a number of times on this show. And Sean Payton has said, significant is not a big enough word for how different things are going to be in 2024 when it comes to the kickoff game. He finally explicitly stated after Tuesday's, practice session, he stated that there will be offensive linemen out there blocking for this new play. I mean, it's that critical to win at the new line of scrimmage, quote unquote, right? And so you've seen the Broncos, they went out and they got Sam Mustipher, who started games at center for both the Bears and the Ravens in recent years. Calvin Throckmorton, who has started games for Sean Payton in New Orleans. You saw them bring back a guy like Quinn Bailey. We've seen them bring in other players on the offensive line, like Frank Crum was one of their biggest additions after the NFL draft. They went and got Nick Gargiulo from South Carolina during the NFL draft, and Matt Parrott, the former third-round pick of the New York Giants. So there's been a lot of these experienced and athletic offensive linemen signed to this Denver Broncos team, which we kind of figured, like, then they had some developmental tackles they liked. You got Luke Wattenberg and Alex Forsyth competing for the starting center job. There's a lot going on with that offensive line already. So you bring in all of these backup O linemen who are now going to completely shift the roster conversation. We talked about previously how Payton, in the course of his history with the New Orleans Saints, pretty historically kept around 8 offensive linemen every year, with a couple of years with more. This year, I don't know, maybe you can expect 10 or 11 offensive linemen to be kept on this Denver Broncos 53-man roster, and that's going to have a ripple effect everywhere on this team. But the Broncos, they know that this kickoff play is going to be a big deal, and Sean Payton and his staff are already devising ways to gain an advantage there. So don't be surprised if you see basically a starting offensive line that's out there for these kickoff return plays, because those guys already, their profession is blocking, right? And you want to be able to gain an advantage any way that you can to create those hidden yardage, the hidden yardage in special teams. So very exciting development to hear Payton kind of finally come out and acknowledge that we could specifically see offensive linemen factoring in the new kickoff return rules. That's a really big development for those guys, for their value and for the future value of backup offensive linemen across the league, presently for value for kickoff return men. I mean, it's just it's going to have a ripple effect everywhere on the roster. So that's worth watching as we get closer to training camp and fans are allowed to be out there to witness kind of what's going on. It's going to be fascinating to see which guys on the offensive line unit the Broncos are throwing out in the kickoff return game. Defensively, Sean Payton had some really interesting notes to share on guys like JL Skinner. We get questions about JL Skinner all the time. Sounds like he has something to build on as of last year and the second half of the season in practices. But maybe the most exciting development for Broncos country could be the development of pass rusher Baron Browning, who Sean Payton said he's been spending a lot of time with him and he loves coaching this guy. We're going to break down Baron Browning's potential impact on this defense with a breakout season in 2024 on today's episode, Locked On Broncos. Today's episode of Locked On Broncos is brought to you by BetterHelp. Sometimes we all need the opportunity to get something off our chest, right? Big or small, certain things can really start to get to you. And it's important to let that out, especially to someone who's unbiased in your life. So today, I want to say how I really feel about something, okay? You might be even thinking about the same thing this week. I want to tell you how I really feel about the Denver Broncos continually being projected at just 5 wins this season. I mean, we got all these people saying the Broncos got the worst roster in the NFL and that they're only going to win 5 games. I mean, these are things that they get to me. I lose a little sleep at night over it, but no, therapy, hey, it can be different for everyone. And most of us, we got way bigger problems than our favorite sports team or what people think of our favorite sports team, right? And it's important to get those things off your chest every once in a while. If you're thinking of starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try. It's entirely online. It's designed to be flexible and suited to your schedule. So visit BetterHelp.com/locked on to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/locked on. Baron Browning has a chance to completely change the fortunes of the Denver Broncos defense in 2024 with a big breakout season. And Sean Payton said that he's way ahead this year of where he was last year. We're going to talk about that incoming potential breakout season for Baron Browning, as well as other defensive notes from week 3 of Denver Broncos OTAs on today's episode, Locked On Broncos. But want to say thank you And give a shout out once again to all of you that make Locked On Broncos your first listen of the day every single day. For you everydayers out there, you know that you can expect unbiased and exciting coverage of your favorite team every single day right here on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And let's talk about the defensive side of the football for a bit here, because this is an offense dominated offseason for the Denver Broncos, isn't it? I mean, when we talk about the new quarterback, Courtland Sutton, we've talked about Lucas Krull getting some serious hype from Sean Payton. There's been a lot going on offensively for the Broncos. But what about defensively? Probably the most pressing question, I think, for this Denver Broncos team defensively this offseason has been, can this team find a quote unquote alpha in the pass rush department? I mean, this pass rush hasn't been necessarily there's not a Von Miller out there. There's not even a Bradley Chubb out there as far as what we've seen the last couple of years. Got a nice breakout year last year from Jonathan Cooper. Got a nice breakout year from Nick Bonito. We've seen some flashes from Baron Browning. But if somebody can emerge into that double-digit sack guy every single year, man, that would be massive for the Denver Broncos defense, and it would make everybody on that unit so much better. Sean Payton was asked a question about Baron Browning, who, according to Troy Rank, has been really standing out so far at OTAs. Payton said that Baron was, quote unquote, much further along than last year. And you remember last year at OTAs or before OTAs, Baron suffered a knee injury that had to go ahead and have a procedure done, missed the first portion of the season because of that injury. And the Broncos signed Frank Clark in response to that whole ordeal. Not the best portion of last year for sure, but for Baron to be much further along this year than he was last year is a huge bit of news for Denver Broncos fans. Sean Payton said that Baron is in good shape. He's been working hard, and he said, they basically have 5 conversations a day. There's a growing confidence from Payton in Browning, and Payton said that Browning has a confidence about him that's reminded him of the late pass rusher Will Smith, who Sean Payton had when he was there in New Orleans. And, I think that when you talk about Baron Browning, you talk about a guy that has all the athletic traits in the world. He came out of Ohio State as an off-ball linebacker with the ability to rush the passer. There was always that versatility there. But little did we know the Broncos were going to transition him full-time to the edge position. And when they did, the results were pretty immediate, right? I mean, back in that 2021, 2022, we saw Browning have moments where it was like, man, he kind of looks like 58 out there. He's kind of looking a little bit like Von Miller. Even looks like him when he's doing his sack dances and things like that. For him to take these moments of potential and turn it into a season full of pass rush dominance, the sky's the limit for this guy. I mean, he could be one underrated player that, I mean, we talk about Pat Surtain getting a new contract potentially in the near future for the Broncos. Quinn Miners could get a big money contract in the near future from the Broncos. Baron Browning could be one of those guys that he's being overlooked by a lot of people right now because he's only been kind of sporadically dominant as a rusher. And it just hasn't been consistently there yet. He could end up being one of those guys that becomes a big money contract player in short order. And I think that Sean Payton really likes him. I mean, when you hear him talk, when he starts glowing about a guy, when he's talking about him, it just gives you the impression that he wants this guy to be a core player of the roster going forward. So that news could be huge for Baron as he's taken on a expanded leadership role, which is another thing that Payton highlighted last week at OTAs for the Denver Broncos. Baron taking on an expanded leadership role is big for this team. JL Skinner at the safety position is an interesting wild card for this team as well. When you look at the Broncos secondary going through a lot of changes this year, new starter opposite Pat Surtain at cornerback. We don't know who that's going to be just yet. There's a new duo starting at safety this year. It's no longer the Justin Simmons and Kareem Jackson show. It's PJ Locke and Brandon Jones. But what about JL Skinner, the 6th round pick out of Boise State, who was supposed to be a top 100 guy? I think JL Skinner is going to be a factor this year. Sean Payton said that In the second half of last year, they started really noticing his improvements in coverage on the practice tape as the season went along. And he says that he's obviously in the run game. That's where he makes his hay, right? I mean, that's where JL Skinner is able to use that size, that physicality, that kind of, heat seeking missile type of mentality at the position. Payton said that was always there, but then the coverage aspect came as the season went along. And they started noticing as a staff when they're breaking down practice tape, like, man, he's really taking steps forward in this way. So when the pads come on, that's what Payton said. He said, when the pads come on, this is going to be a guy that you're going to want to watch closely because, I mean, he could end up being a key contributor this year. We don't know the health status of Caden Stearns, and we don't know exactly how much we're going to see the Broncos rotating different defensive backs in the nickel and dime packages. So his situation is going to be a fun one to monitor. And also, Payton said that he's anxious when the pads come on to be able to see Jonas Griffith, who could potentially be the starter opposite Alex Singleton at off-ball linebacker this year. Jonas is another guy who's, man, big-time athlete, physical. He proved himself in the starting lineup for the Broncos. The first year they traded for him back in 2021 has honestly just got a bad luck streak injury-wise when it comes to the last 2 seasons. So he's still young enough. He could still bounce back from those injuries and be an impact starter at off-ball linebacker, another name to monitor as the pads come back on. But thank you so much, Broncos Country, for tuning in to another episode of Locked On Broncos. And guess what? Locked On, they've launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube. And now it's also available on Amazon Fire TV in the free Fire TV channels app. It's called Locked On Sports Today, and it's here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows covering every single league. Find Locked On Sports Today, now available on the free Fire TV channels app. We'll see you next time, Broncos Country. Hope you have a great rest of the day.